Welcome to the grid technique. It can help you improve your proportions in your drawings. In this video, I'm going to show you the folding technique, the measuring technique, and a technique using a phone app. You can choose which one you want to use. Let's make sure you've got a pencil, sharpener, rubber and tissue paper, but your rubber has sharp points on it for details. And remember your tissue paper for blending your tones. You might need scissors, ruler and a pen, but don't worry if you don't have them. First, we're going to choose the right composition. I tend to print off a picture and use a viewfinder. I've just cut a rectangle shape out of a piece of card. It's quick and easy to do. You just fold over a piece of card and use some scissors to cut one line up one side and one line up the other. Then fold over and cut through the middle to cut out a rectangle shape in the centre. And that creates your viewfinder. I put it over my picture to decide what the best composition is. What do I actually want to see in my final drawing? I quite like this one, which changes it into a square shape. Having your picture square helps with the first grid technique. This technique involves folding. I take my square picture and I fold it directly in half. Make sure it's perfectly in half, touch the two corners and fold it. Then unfold it and fold it again in half. Now you should have two folds and that creates 4 different squares. You could just leave it as 4 different squares, or you could do what I'm going to do now, which is to fold it to make some more squares. The reason I'm doing that is because my image is quite detailed and complicated, so I need to make sure that I'm able to copy the proportions correctly. The more squares you have, the easier it will be to do the grid technique. So I've now folded it into 16 squares, 4 across the top and 4 down the side. Next I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to mark down those lines. I'm doing this with a pen so you can see it easily on the video, but you can do yours with a pencil. To transfer it, I put my picture on top of my paper and I use my pencil to draw around the picture. This is slightly easier than measuring it and means you don't need a ruler for this bit. I use my pencil to mark where I've done the grid lines on my picture. Then all I need to do is match up those grid lines. I'm using my ruler here, but I could also use anything with a straight edge. So I could use the viewfinder that I had earlier. I could even use the picture that I'm using. A Fab 5 top tip is count the number of squares to make sure you've got the correct number on the grid. Make sure you do your grid lines faintly and then label the squares. I've done A, B, C, D and 1, 2, 3, 4. You now need to look on those grid lines and try and match up where the shapes cross over the grids. So here I'm drawing the key shape diagonally in C2 to cross over from the top left to the bottom right. I need to draw where the key crosses here over C3 and D3 and then draw in the different shapes where it goes down to the bottom of the key and crosses over into the different squares. Keep looking at your picture and draw each square in turn until you've copied all of the shapes, including any shadows. Then you can carefully rub out your grid lines and start to add tone. Grid technique number 2 is measuring using a ruler. Again, I'm using my viewfinder to find the best composition. Then I use a ruler to measure my picture to 5 inches by 3 inches. You don't have to use 3 inches by 5, you can use any size you want. Next I measure at every inch mark. and draw my grid lines. 3 inches across and 5 inches down equals 15 squares. So I measure that out and draw the grid onto my paper lightly. Remember, the grid lines need to be light so you can rub them out afterwards. I look to where the key crosses over into the different squares and then try and match up those shapes to fit into the squares. This takes time, so work slowly at your own pace. Look carefully to see where the shapes cross over into different squares on the grid. Keep going until you've finished all the shapes. Here's a Fab 5 top tip for rubbing out guidelines. Be careful when you're rubbing out the guidelines. Use your finger to get rid of any bits of rubber. This will stop you smudging your work. If you accidentally rub out any of your drawing, just draw it back in. And the last grid technique is using an app on your phone or iPad. There are lots of different grid maker apps that you can download for free. The one that I tend to use is Drawing Grid Maker. This is what the app looks like. It allows you to click on the file icon where you can get one of your own pictures and put a grid on the top. You can then choose whether you want different columns or rows and how many you want to make up your grid on top of your picture. It also allows you to turn your picture into black and white and put the letters and numbers on there if you need to. You can then save your picture with the grid lines on and use it to draw grid lines onto your paper and transfer your drawing. You need to use one of these grid techniques to help you with your next task.